Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Conquer the Gauntlet Pro, Evan Preparis. I don't have Brenna with me for this episode, as she's been notoriously missing for the last couple, but I do have another guest. But first, I want a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by both Inside Tracker and JRen Fitness. We're going to be talking about Inside Tracker a lot on this episode. They're the company that tests your blood and basically provides you feedback as far as changes you should make in your diet or training to improve. Then the other sponsor for the show is JRen Fitness. So Jared Renier, who we've had on the podcast several times before, is back to discuss my post results from Endure the Gauntlet. So Jared, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back.
Yeah, so we're recording this about a month after the event. And if you liked the last episode we did together, where it was called The Science of Suffering, and we went through the pre-event tests that we took, you're really going to like this one because we're going to go over basically the same thing but for the post-event. If you did not like the last episode, well, I'm sorry, because this is going to be more of the same. I thought it was really interesting. I'm kind of nerdy like that, though. So, yeah. All right, and then we'll go over a couple other quick things at the end, which we'll get to. All right, so first, let's just knock it out. Let's go over some of the tests. So the 4 tests I took before and then I took after was one, the Inside Tracker blood test, where they draw your blood and they analyze it with all these different biomarkers. Second one was the body fat bod pod analysis. The third was the Dari movement test. So it's basically motion capture cameras that are around you, and you move and it shows where you have tightness or where you have weak points. And then the final was a VO2 max test, and when I take the VO2 max test, they automatically give me a fitness test too, even though I didn't really want to do it, but that's okay. All right, so let's start off with the Inside Tracker, the blood test. So I took the post-results blood test I think it was about 5 days after I finished Endure the Gauntlet, my 48-hour OCR. So Jared, let's do a quick run-through of kind of what that showed.
Okay. Just going from the top down with metabolism, and these are their kind of categories they put it in. Metabolism and weight control. Your glucose went down a little bit, still at 90, so they're in their yellow range, but glucose went down, so that's good. More exercise helps your glucose go down. Shocker. Your total cholesterol went up a little bit. Maybe a stress response, but could also be just due to your taper ahead of time. But you went from 129 to 135, so nothing real big. And then your good cholesterol went up more than your bad cholesterol, so that's good. So that's the total number. I know a lot of health professionals will kind of look at that, but they still want to cut that apart, and they'll just kind of look at that ratio. So as long as the good cholesterol goes up more than the bad cholesterol, most people stay happy. Calcium, vitamin D, calcium went up, vitamin D went down by 1 nanogram per milliliter, so it didn't really go down a whole lot. You do need more vitamin D, though. If you don't already take a supplement, you should probably do that. You're at 36 at that test. And the low end of the range for green is 30, so you could probably stand to take one of those pills every day, or just spend a lot more time in the sun. Take your pick. But getting down to the fun stuff, the inflammation markers went up. Shocking. Your white blood cell count went from 4.2 to 5.5, so a little bit of a gain there. I don't really know what this one is. Let's get HSCRP. Your first test was 0.3, and you're well in the green. That range goes from 0 to 3. In the second test, you are 2.6, and they have you in the yellow. Your neutrophils, you're still in the green on that one, which are also kind of a stress response. You went from 1900 to 3100. So yeah, a lot of those markers went up, kind of like we talked about in that first episode. Creatine went down, so again, you're going to be using that sort of stuff as you run. That your muscles store creatine, and when you work out, excuse me, once you use that, it takes a little bit longer to build back up. So unless you're eating a lot of red meat or you're taking 5 grams per day, it's kind of hard to maintain. So you went from 128, which is well within the green, to 76. One thing that was really shocking was your testosterone went up. Kind of like we talked about on that first episode, we were expecting it to go down from a stress response, and your cortisol to go up, but you went from 417 testosterone to 553. Again, that's both are well within their normal ranges. You were actually in the yellow on the low side the first time, but now you're back in the green. Cortisol, you went from 17 down to 13. So I'm going to guess, kind of like we talked about before the event, we didn't talk about it much on the podcast, but just you and I talking. From this initial test, you realized you might have been a little more fatigued than what you thought. So you said you tapered a little more. So I'm wondering if that isn't part of that taper, of you taking more time off, and then we'll get into more of the race itself. But just kind of like you said, the miles that you'd planned on running, you weren't able to hit just due to, the nature of the course and things like that. So I'm wondering if both of those didn't kind of factor into that testosterone and cortisol coming back into line a little bit.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, I think one of the cool things about Inside Tracker was the results showed me that I was essentially overtraining or on the verge of overtraining, or, high cortisol, low testosterone. So one of the changes I made going into the event was I really adjusted my taper and made it a little more aggressive. I think with some of these long endurance events, a lot of times it's better to show up a little bit under-trained and over-rested without any nagging injuries, rather than to show up, like I hit everything on my training plan, but I'm feeling a little run down, start going into the race. So, yeah, I think, and then obviously after the race was over, I didn't do anything. Like I stopped. I didn't do anything. Period. Right. I by the time I took the blood test, which was about 4 or 5 days later, I literally just been walking around my house and going to work. I was wearing my UFOs shoes there, which are like the softest things in the world. So I was rocking those around into work and stuff like that. So yeah.
Everything else on there was pretty much the same. The only thing that I thought was interesting, and you and I had kind of touched on it a little bit, was the liver function and toxicity. One of those numbers went from, the measure was from 9 to 46. Your first test was an 18. That's well within the green. And their second test was a 31, which they have as a yellow, which kind of shows me you may have been closer to rhabdo than what we would like, than what someone would prefer. Just to know that if you're not for rhabdomyolysis, basically you break down muscle. Let me get it right. Too much muscle is being broken down. You have protein going into the liver, into the kidneys that it can't really process, and so that kind of causes a backup in the system. Bad things happen. So I'm wondering if here even 5 days, like I said, 4 or 5 days later, your liver was still wondering what the hell you did.
Yeah, definitely a strong possibility there. I was kind of surprised in general that some of the results were not as bad as I thought they were going to be. I thought it was just going to be like a complete, shit show going on inside my body, frankly.
I was kind of hoping for that. Not for your sake, but it would just look cooler on the sheet.
Yeah, so I was surprised, and as far as like with these big endurance events, I find them very draining, right? Because I'm putting out so much effort during them. Seeing my blood tests come back with a lot of, essentially neutral results, or, some things even improving. Obviously, some things went down, but seeing them come back with a lot of those positives really helped me get over, like, the next mental hurdle of, like, I still have a season going on. We still have World's Toughest Mudder coming up. So it was kind of like a science-backed check that says, like, hey, you should be able to, we'll get into it a little bit more because there's obviously stress to my muscles and my neurological system, but it was like a first step in the right direction of being like, hey, your blood is saying you're mostly good minus a couple of factors.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, and then if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have a personal trainer or nutritionist to help me analyze a lot of these results, well, don't worry. Again, the website, when you actually sign into Inside Tracker, it breaks it down, like it tells you what everything is, and then tells you what foods you can take to adjust your plan. And it also has like a goal setting thing. So I clicked on endurance for mine, so all my goals are endurance focused. But if you're interested in building muscle or losing fat, you can click on those things, and it adjusts what foods you can eat or what foods you should eat to improve your different biomarkers. So
yeah, all the stuff that I'm getting off there as far as numbers and being in the green, red, and yellow, that's all provided by them. A lot of that, being a personal trainer, I have an idea of what some of this stuff is, but as far as the ranges and stuff like that, that takes more letters behind your name than what I have. So that's all I'm given.
One of the other cool things I liked is, because this is my second test, it shows my first test on the graph, right? Like it shows 2 different points and a line connecting them, showing that like, oh, this went up, this went down, or this stayed the same, which I thought was nice. I was kind of wondering if they were going to do that. So cool. Any other final thoughts on Inside Tracker and the blood test before we move on?
I thought it was cool the first time. I still think it's really cool the second time, especially. I do. I can nerd out to it. I really like it. I do.
Yeah, definitely something interesting. I actually wrote an article for Mud Run Guide that goes over Inside Tracker. So if you want to go back and check that out, you can search for it, Mud Run Guide Inside Tracker. It'll come up. And one of the things I thought was really cool about it was, initially I would look at Inside Tracker and be like, well, that's definitely just for top-level guys that really want to fine-tune their performance to like perfection. And I still think it's for that, but I also think kind of the average person might actually get more out of it than the top-level athlete, because it really has some dietary suggestions in there, and like I said, you can adjust your goals to fit whatever you want. So definitely a cool thing to check out if you want to if you're putting all this money into racing and stuff like that, you may want to take the time and invest in your health too, instead of just kind of blindly going through the dark there.
Right.
Cool. So that was Inside Tracker. Then I also did the BOD-POD body fat analysis. So you basically put on some spandex, they throw you in like a chamber there, and they change the air pressure, and it measures your body fat, your muscle, and how much bone you have basically. So what did the results of that one come out to?
You had a 0.08% change between your July and August test. As far as body fat percentage, your fat weight went down 2 pounds, your muscle weight went up 2 pounds, or your fat-free weight went up 2 pounds, sorry. So that's muscle, bone, all that kind of stuff. With that, a lot of your body fat percentage, the anthropomorphic testing is what they call it, is a big fancy name for it, but any of your true body fat percentages are going to have a percent error, usually of 3 to 5% on either side. BOD-POD is not exempt from that. The closest you can really get is a DEXA, which takes an x-ray of your body every couple inches, but even then, that's going to still have some of that range of error based on hydration and stuff like that. So with that, within a month, and especially after a long endurance event like that, where if anything you would have lost muscle, I think that one's just a difference in the system there. It was getting, about like stepping on a scale the second time and weighing, a little bit different. It's going to be hard to get the exact same measure on a machine like that.
Yeah, and then one of the other things was like my body fat percentage was about the same as my muscle mass increase, which makes me further think that it was just an error in testing, right? Because what are the chances I lost the exact amount of body fat that I gained in muscle, right? Like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, because your body weight went from on their sheet 156.013. So they're measuring out to the thousandth of a pound, which I've never seen that in pounds. I've seen it in kilograms, that makes sense because that's what that system's made for. And then on your second weigh-in, you're 156.280. So you gained 0.2 of a pound, or if you want to round up, 0.3 of a pound. But within that, you had 2 pounds of muscle and fat change in a month. Possible, yes, but with your training regimen or your taper regimen, I don't see it. Like I said, yeah.
I will say I do feel a little leaner, like from looking in the mirror.
Right.
But again, the exact muscle gain and body fat percentage loss being like the same, it's just, again, I agree. I think it's just error in testing. But I will say I do feel leaner. I don't know if that makes a difference.
There you go. So. As long as you feel leaner, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that was the bod pod. We also went back to KU, University of Kansas, to do the Dari movement test. So that's the one where you go through a bunch of one-legged hops and, plyometric movements and arm raises and stuff like that. And then they tell you kind of where there's tightness on your body. One of the things I didn't like about that, which I can't remember if we talked about this in the first episode, was there was nothing that really tested the upper body. I mean, all the upper body stuff was real basic. It was like, raise your hands above your head, put your hands out to the side, and for OCR, obviously, we do a lot more than just moving my hands up and down. So I would kind of would have liked to seen some data as far as that, and seeing if, like I tore my pec about, was it like 2 years ago? I'm curious to see if it picked up that as a weak point, because I know that is a weak point for me. But anyway, let's go over some of the results that we saw.
So, yeah, in the first test, Dari kind of kicks out this score that matters for Dari. It doesn't really translate to anything else. But your first score was a 1700. That's a conglomerate of your power, strength, and dysfunction. With that, your overall score was 1700. They gave you a level 4, which they classify as excellent performance. And then they've got a couple other measures on here that, as far as your symmetry and things like that. And on the second test, you had a 1450, so you went down. And you had a level 3, which is just above average performance. And then a few other things. But one thing that I did think was interesting is even though because I was there both days. First day, you said you felt fine. Maybe a little bit tired from the events that you had previously. But, by comparison, I'm guessing you felt worse for the post-race test, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Your your vertical jump went up by almost an inch.
That's interesting.
Your vertical jump went up by a half inch. Your depth jump went up by exactly an inch. And so, all of your jumps, other than your single leg jumps, went up, which I thought was really weird. But then, your squat performance and all that kind of stuff was bad. And then the one that was just the most fun for me to watch, knowing what, and kind of like you had said, sleeping afterwards was difficult for you because you just mess with your system so much, and then obviously staying awake for that long is going to mess with your nervous system. Your balance wasn't great before. It was poor, kind of in the leaning towards the middle in the first one. You're pegged out on the bottom, your neuro system and balance on the second test. It doesn't get lower. It's that was your score that brought you down on the rest of it, I think.
That's great. I will say, you think of balance obstacles as easy, but when you've been running and doing other obstacles for that long, even things like Z-beam slackline started getting hard, where your body just doesn't respond as fast and the muscles aren't as strong to center yourself. So even during Endure the Gauntlet, even those were, they were still, was still much better than doing anything with my hands, but it was still not super pleasant to go across them.
And
so.
One thing, to be fair, like, because obviously the listeners weren't there, this balance test isn't just like standing on one foot or standing on a balance beam. It's standing on one foot, lift your other foot, half an inch off the ground. Just make sure the other foot's off the ground. But then the tricky part is closing your eyes so you don't have that visual frame of reference to kind of center yourself. So that is more challenging than, the practice walking across a beam or something like that. If you don't believe me, if you're not driving in your car, once you get home, stand on one foot and close your eyes. It'll be easy for the first few seconds, but after your brain kind of forgets where that up and down is, and it has to just rely on that feeling of gravity, it is a little bit different. So, to be fair, that was the test, and if you don't practice that, it is a little bit harder. But with you not really getting to practice it before, and then the second time, you only had one shot at it, it really does show how much your nervous system was just thrown all out of whack, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the actual jump heights increasing, I think that's a result of when I took the last test, I basically trained through, and then that morning, obviously, it didn't work out. I just went to the test. But again, I was like coming off of 2 or 3 days of consistent physical exercise. So right. I think that just shows you how important a taper is, even for like a short race, right? Like, making sure you're tapering before any race is a good idea, especially if you want to do well. So, taking that extra day or two off, you're not going to lose fitness in 2 days, but you can show up to a race tired and overtrained. So,
exactly.
Yeah. All right, so that was the Dari movement test, and then we went on. That one was what was it, like 4 days after the event, 5 days, something like that?
That one was on Thursday. So yeah, you had ran through Sunday at 11:30, or what time did you actually get off the course? A little after 1?
It was like 12:30.
12:30, so yeah.
Yeah. You
had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then tested Thursday morning, so 3.5 days.
Yep. All right, then this VO2 max and fitness test was on September 11th, so it's about 2 weeks or so after the event. I had to travel for work for a week, so I couldn't schedule it any earlier, and I did not feel like I could actually run for a couple days, so I didn't want to do it immediately after. So I did that one, and let's just go over the results real quick.
So yeah, the first VO2 max, you were in the 60s. I don't remember exactly, but this one you were down in the 50s, so you're still in superior, so don't worry, you're still an elite athlete. You're good. But like I said, the first time you tested, you were, I think, I want to say 63 milliliters per kilogram per minute, and this time you were at 52.9, and so you barely made that superior cut. That superior cut is at 52.5. So if you would have ran like another 4 hours, I don't know if you would have made it.
Yeah. So for that one, I just felt like my heart rate. So it's a submax VO2 max test, right? So they don't actually bring you up, like we talked about on the last podcast. They don't actually bring you up to your max heart rate and then watch you fall off the treadmill. What they do is they go into your projected 80% of your max heart rate. And I did feel like my heart rate, I ended up doing like KC Timber Challenge, a local OCR, and I ended up doing a triathlon about 2 weeks after the event. It was a charity race for a friend. And I did feel like for both those, I felt like my heart rate increased more rapidly than normal and kind of spiked a little earlier. So I don't think my VO2 max actually went down. I think it's just a matter of, my body's a little bit stressed and my heart rate is increasing faster than it normally does.
Gotcha.
That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you were breaking up there. I lost you for a little bit, but yeah, I think I got the gist of it. Yeah, it's one of those where they kind of, like I said, take you right up to that point and then guesstimate the last little bit.
Yeah, and then we did a bunch of fitness tests afterwards, grip strength and stuff like that. Again, I think my grip strength actually went up, but that's just because the last time I did was like right after Conquer the Gauntlet Wichita, which I destroyed my grip a couple days before. So
yeah, your grip strength went up a lot.
Yeah.
10 kilograms.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was interesting with Endure the Gauntlet was just the flesh on my hands just took such abuse that, I still had I'm not going to say I had a lot of grip strength left, but I still had a little bit left in me. The actual skin on my hands was the limiting factor before my grip completely gave out. So, while I'm not going to say my grip was doing real well, 15 hours in, it was my hands and grabbing onto things that hurt. I would do Continental Divide, the slip wall, and I would come off of it, and I could feel my heartbeat in my hands for the next couple minutes as I was walking, because it was just so much damage there. So, yeah, I think that about wraps it up for the fitness test results. Any other takeaways you saw there?
No. This one does also have a body fat and BMI. So this one has your body fat percentage going up from the previous test. So did you do like one of those bioimpedance where you hold on to the electrode things for this test?
No, we did do resting metabolic rate though. So they put you lay down and put this hood over you, and then you just breathe for 10 minutes, and then it tells you what your, how many calories you're burning a day just from sitting still, living.
Gotcha. And yeah, you're the only other thing that your back strength, that test that you said you just hulked out on last time, that one went down a little bit, but again, that's to be expected. So.
Yeah. I also don't like that test. I think it was too form based. It's all right, now, flex your back, but don't straighten your legs. It was I don't know. I don't think you're going to get an accurate result of that test. I don't like it.
Yeah, probably not.
It was almost a shrug, but not a shrug. So, I think it's too easy to cheat for that one.
Yeah.
Or not use the proper form. So when I was talking to, if you haven't seen the video that Jake Deal made, one of the strength and speed guys, he did kind of a recap of the event. It's about a 17-minute video. It's available on the Strength and Speed website. It's available on my Facebook. It's available on the Strength and Speed Facebook page. Go check it out. I think he did a really good job. And then there's also an 8-minute one that was filmed mid-race by Jason Dupree of OCR Talk. That's also available on my Facebook page and off the Strength and Speed website. So when I was talking to Jake after the event, this is maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the event, he asked me if I would do it again. And I was like, no, not interested. What's funny is about endurance events is, every time I do an endurance event, people ask me a similar question, and I'm always like, absolutely not. And then it usually changes a couple weeks later. So I will say, am I interested in doing 48 hours of Conquer the Gauntlet again? No, that's still a hard no, right? It was just too much. But would I do 48 hours of a different race series? I could convince myself to do that. You gotta give me a year and a couple months and let me forget about most of the pain, and then I'll think it's a good idea again. But with the obstacles that Conquer the Gauntlet, they just became too hard too fast, and while I felt like my performance was real good for the first 15-ish to 20 hours maybe. I'd say the middle section of the event was pretty poor, and then the end was it was world's toughest warrior dash, where the obstacles, I'm basically, doing balance obstacles, the carries, and then the ones that essentially require no physical strength to get over. So,
but like you said, 100% completion on Sherwood Forest. So
yeah. If you don't know, Sherwood Forest it's just a walk through the woods basically with fallen trees. So, but to be fair, their 5 walls of fury does count as one obstacle. So that's 5 8-foot walls is one. So I'd say one of the other interesting things about the event was, I come around on the first lap and I saw David Mainprize, and he was asking me what I thought of the course so far. And normally during a race, right, you get that adrenaline rush, or there's that strong desire to complete things because it matters and you're going to lose your band or you're going to have to do a penalty loop. One of the things that made this harder was there was no one chasing me, and there was, in some respects there was less of an incentive to do well because, if I fell in the water on the obstacle, it was just all right, I just keep going, right?
But
not having that adrenaline, that pressure to perform actually made some of the earlier laps harder than I was expecting. Like the very first time I went across Stairway, I was like, that was a little harder than normal. That was weird.
That makes sense.
But then, yeah. So that was kind of something interesting that I was not expecting going into it. So.
Let's toughest mudder have to do Evan's toughest mudder instead, and then do 48 hours that way.
And so that was one of the things. I actually reached out to Toughest Mudder at one point and see if they wanted to host the event, because frankly, it would have been a lot easier than doing Conquer the Gauntlet. But they didn't respond, so yeah.
Well, and like we talked about before, and we talked about between the two podcasts, but Conquer the Gauntlet is very much designed to be a single lap race, and even that designed to be a very challenging, have a very small percentage of people keep their bands or their belts in Conquer's case. So let alone trying to do that for multiple laps over multiple days.
Now we did raise I wouldn't say way more. We did raise more than I was hoping for, so that's a pretty awesome result. So they're currently sitting at just over $6,500.
That's awesome.
In money raised. I'm going to read out a bunch of the names that donated just as a quick thank you. Kevin Milley, Mitchell Kerr, Josh Runquist, Callie Preparis, Brian Fisher, David Mainprize, Ashley Samples, Brenna Calvert, Chris Passanisi, Ben McCall, Jim Kuhn, Tim Stamper, Lindsey Mount Campbell, Rhett Buford, Preston Brooks, Stacy Arnold, Angie Dozier, Tony Hazapis, Kelly Williams, Christopher Balvin, Jesse Bay, Leah Hensley, Justin Weisgerber, William Shell, Leah again, Tabby Wood, Doug Snyder, Drew Travis, William Shell, Christina Armstrong, Adrian B. Hanada, Michael Buffton, Jen Cochran, Dustin Radney, Lawrence Popritkin, Mike Stefano, Eric Scott, Terry Boyer, Siegland Linda Leonard, Randy Lackey, Christopher Elliott, Gilbert Chediak, Dennis Pape, Adela Legados Verutis, George Lavis, Marie Opitz, Iona Algren, Aaron Brabson, Ann Woodward, Liz Dritzis, AC Hale, Deva Radzius, Maruzia Melakrinos, Chris Gallagher, and that's just the ones that donated off the Facebook fundraiser. That doesn't count. I know like Sarah Langoni donated on the actual website, and that doesn't count all the registrations. So all the people who paced me are registered through that. All that money went to charity too, so that doesn't count them. So definitely appreciate that. And some of the donations were they were huge, and I'm not going to read off how much people gave, but I mean I was completely shocked with some of the donations people gave. It was very, very kind of them. So
that's awesome.
Pretty awesome to see that many people kind of come together for a good cause.
A lot of KCOCR, so good job, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's about it. You got anything else to kind of wrap up? I will say, if you want to hear like a full rundown of the event, head over to Link Endurance. We did a post-race podcast with them, and they kind of asked me about all the different aspects of the event. So head over to Link Endurance with Mo and Miles. Listen to their podcast. Came out really good, I thought. We covered a lot of topics on that. We're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Sometimes I write reviews for random products in the mail that I get. And a lot of times companies will ask me ahead of time, are you interested in reviewing my product? And if it's not something I believe in, I typically just say no right off the bat, right? Because I understand there's people behind all these companies, and I don't want to rip someone to pieces on the internet unless I feel like it's well-deserved, like they're purposely misleading people. But one of the products I ended up getting in the mail that I had not requested, someone else had volunteered me to write a review for them, was copper gloves. So it's like the Tommy Copper thing you see on the internet, on the TV late at night, and it's like copper-infused fabric provides magical healing properties. So someone sent me a pair of gloves. I'm not going to write the review, but I don't think they do anything. They're just gloves. Jared, what's your take on copper-lined gloves or copper fabric gloves here?
It's one of those things that, because I haven't seen one of those. I have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning most days, so I go to bed before those infomercials come on. But trying to think back, because it's based off what? Because of the ion charge of the copper, it aligns things in your blood and does all this magical stuff, right?
I think so. Yeah. Sure.
I'm with you. They're just gloves. It's one of those things. If you in your heart of heart believe it's going to help, it's probably going to help because the placebo effect is an effect. It will. If you think you're going to get better, a lot of the times you can get a little bit better, no matter what it is. So that can be, but yeah, the copper causing these magical, inflammatory markers to go down, I don't think so.
I tried to find some actual studies, did some quick Googling. I didn't look too deep, but I did not see anything that would convince me that these things actually work or any sort of similar product work. So,
right.
I don't know. If someone has some sort of other magical stories or actually has a study that backs it up, send it our way. I'd be curious to read it. But
yeah.
Now I have a pair of light gloves that I can wear during winter runs. That's about it, though. Not buying off on the copper healing properties.
I would think that the copper would almost make it colder because copper is a pretty conductive metal, so it's going to take your body heat and conduct that out into the air, I would think.
If I could feel the copper in them, I think I'd like them better, but they just feel like regular gloves to me. It's like I put them on, I'm like, I got sweaty hands now from wearing gloves. That's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you're interested in Jared Renier, getting trained by him, he has a Facebook page, facebook.com/jrenfitness. You can head over, shoot him a message. He's training everyone from people just looking to lose weight all the way up to members of the Conquer the Gauntlet Pro team. So, kind of head over there. What would you say your specialty is, Jared?
I like to think of myself as well-rounded, specializing in OCR, of course, but what makes it a little bit different is I have a lot of my OCR clients lift weight a little more than what I think some of the other OCR trainers do, just because you're going to get enough OCR practice while you're running. I also incorporate that into the training, but when you lift weight, there are other benefits that come other than just getting stronger. You can elicit a lot more changes while keeping the volume of training lower than just going out and running miles or running hills and just that repeated pounding of cardio and miles on the body.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of weight training for OCR too. I think there's a lot of positive aspects, and then it also makes it very easy to make it progressive, right? I think when people do body weight stuff, a lot of times they're like, all right, well now I can do 30 push-ups, and then I'm just going to keep doing 30 push-ups, and again, that stops sending a signal to your body to adapt. Versus, weights force that adaptation because you're once you get a certain weight, most people just pick up the next heavier dumbbell or barbell or stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, exactly. And then I also like fat grips because they test your grip strength all the time. So
they do.
I use fat grips and atomic climbing holds pretty much on everything in the gym. So get a lot of people staring at me, but whatever. Yeah. Not my problem.
They're staring at your catfish forearms.
Yeah. And I will also say, I was listening to a couple other trainers on different podcasts, give their opinions on, OCR training. And, I think it's easy to listen to someone and go, well, that's not the right way to train. Well, I'll also say that every athlete's a little bit different, right? The top, Spartan Pro, probably already has a really strong running base, and they're probably really good at running. So, they may need to do more trail running, or maybe they need to do more weight training to get better at certain obstacles versus I'd say the average person might benefit more from just simply logging some miles. So I'd say, every athlete's a little bit different. So, and I think that's where someone like you comes in as a personal trainer to help guide that rather than trying to figure it out on your own.
Exactly.
All right. I think that about wraps it up. A short episode for us. Any final shout-outs you want to give, Jared?
KCOCR, how's it going, guys? Evan, thank you for letting me come back on. Thank you to my wife for letting me do all this fun stuff that I get to do with OCR and training people. It takes a lot of time away from family sometimes, so yeah.
Awesome. And that's about it. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.